Hello and welcome back to my channel, everyone. Today I will be covering some bizarre cryptid stories from Reddit. Before we get into it, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment as it really helps my channel out, and I very much appreciate it. If you want to check out more of my paranormal videos, you can click the pop-up on the top right corner for a full playlist. And if you have your own paranormal encounters, you can either share it in the comments, post on my subreddit, r/ihaveaspookystory, or send it to my story submission email, pinkpossiblystories@gmail.com. Maybe your story will be in a future video. So with all that out of the way, let's dive into it. A New England Cryptid? When I was about 10 or 12, I went to this camping resort place. I won't name the exact place, but I will say it was in New England. In this resort, you rented out a cabin or RV and you slept in it. The place has a pool and things like that, but the majority of the place was forested. The forest wasn't dense, but it was pretty large and you could easily get lost. The day the sighting happened was just off. Everything just felt weird. Weirdly enough, there wasn't a lot of cicadas or birds singing, even though it was the middle of July. It was like the sky was dead. The fishing was horrible too. Literally no one caught anything. It was like the water was dead as well. Pretty boring day. The pool was fun though. It got even worse when night hit. Everyone else went to sleep, and I stayed up to watch some TV. After a while, I heard some scurrying outside. I really liked animals at that age, still do, so I went to the window to see whatever critter was romping through the leaves. Needless to say, it wasn't a raccoon or possum. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't natural at all. This thing was really long and skinny. I guess you could call its body dog-like. Kinda looked like a greyhound. It was completely hairless. There wasn't even any peach fuzz like a Sphinx cat. Its face was the worst part. It was like a mix of a wolf and a baboon. Its eyes were just black marbles. It stared at me through the window. It was crouching then. It looked like it was digging through the dirt. After a few minutes, it stood up. It was bipedal like a person. The thing must have been like 7 feet tall. It was huge, and it ran away after that. I woke up the next morning. I thought I had dreamt the whole thing. I went outside to where I saw the thing. The leaves were disturbed, and there was a bare spot of dirt. I never saw that thing again. Anyone know what this can be? I just noticed that I didn't explain the cryptid's appearance that well. I'll give some basic descriptions. 7 feet tall, deep, completely black yet shiny eyes. Kind of reminded me of that Vanta Black material. Really long arms, almost at the ankle of the beast. Human/ape-like hands, but with dog-like fingers. No nails, but did have claws. White body, like albino white. Dog, human-like legs and feet. No visible genitals. This one was definitely weird. At first I thought it's probably a nocturnal animal like a raccoon or possum, and maybe even a bear. But that theory basically went out the window with the description of this being. I don't think I've ever come across an animal that is being described in this story in real life. I honestly pictured a lycanthrope or werewolf like how Professor Lupin looked in the Harry Potter movie The Prisoner of Azkaban, which obviously isn't real. Or is it? I'd be curious to know if anyone else in that area had seen this creature before. A strange animal seen at night. I often have trouble sleeping. It gets to the point that sometimes I go walking my dogs at 2 or 3 in the morning and coming home to go back to sleep. I am convinced there is some sort of strange creature living in my quiet country Australian town. So anyways, when I get to the sports ground in my town, I usually let my dogs off the leash so they can have a run around free. They're violent to other dogs, so it's good for them to get out and run around like that. One night, I get to the sports ground and let off my dogs and shone the torch around to see if anyone was around. I looked around, and all of a sudden I see two eyes illuminated by my torch staring back at me from the middle of the oval. At first I thought it was a dog, cat, rabbit, possum, but then it stood up. Whatever it was big. I thought maybe it was a kangaroo, but it stood way higher than any kangaroo I had ever seen, even a red. I couldn't really make out its body because it was pretty far away. Like I said before, my dogs are mean and violent to other animals. They've been known to take on animals way bigger than themselves, like cows and horses. But to whatever this thing was, they backed away to me and whimpered. I took them away on the leash and kept walking. We went through a gate, and halfway across the second oval, I got that strange feeling something was watching us, and turned around to shine the torch. And there it was. It had walked to another gate that led into the same area and was just standing there watching us. It was still too far to make out its body, and I was really scared, so I just started walking, and in 5 minutes I was home. That was about a year ago. It took me a month to work up the nerve to walk the dogs at night again. Last month, I was in the same place at the same time with my dogs when I started thinking about the incident. As I was thinking, every dog in the surrounding neighborhood started barking like crazy. My two started whimpering like the first time, and all of a sudden a giant bang sounded, and something let out a large, threatening howl, which made all the dogs suddenly stop. As soon as that happened, I grabbed the dogs and ran home. I'm convinced there is some sort of creature living there. So with this story, I think it's extremely telling that this person is aware of their dog's typical behavior, and something very big and strange would have had to make them change that behavior like that. I looked up how big kangaroos can get, and they can be anywhere from 3 to 8 feet tall with tail length, which either way is extremely large to humans. So, if it was even larger than that, I can't even begin to imagine what this creature or being could be. And red kangaroos are the largest animal in Australia, so I really don't know what could have been out there that was bigger. Do you have any theories? It was last Sunday morning while we were driving from Nana and Papa's house, and we were in Butler County, Ohio. I know because we had just passed the Butler County Water Tower 1 to 2 minutes ago, and we were driving on a bridge. And I was looking out the window trying to see if I could spot anything unusual like a UFO or something like that, when I saw something 10 to 15 feet away from the bridge. After looking at it for a couple of seconds, it disappeared behind some trees. It looked more like it was gliding rather than flying, as I swear remembering it not flapping its wings. Gliding animals like flying squirrels and flying snakes do not actually have wings. They instead have expanded ribs that make them look like they have wings. It was about 3 feet in height and was about the height of the bridge off the ground, though probably higher. It was green and looked more reptilian than bird-like. One of the first thoughts that came to my head was a flying dragon, which again does not actually fly, but instead just glides. It is native to southeastern Asia and southern India, making a sighting of it in Butler County extremely unusual. It's also only up to 8 inches long, while the one I saw was around 3 feet in height. Strangely, the one I saw looks like a zhanglong, a species of gliding lizard that lived in China but went extinct, making this thing, assuming that's what I saw, out of time, out of height. The only evidence we have of the lizard ever existing was a skeleton found in China that was 6 inches long, but that was probably a juvenile, which might make this one a large adult. However, I feel like adults don't grow that much bigger than juveniles, maybe a couple inches to a foot, but again, not much bigger, and out of place. Theories I have: a bird. I might have just seen a regular bird, and I was just remembering things wrong, like it not flapping and or how green and reptilian-like it was. But I do know this: if it was flapping its wings and or it wasn't that green and reptilian-like, I probably wouldn't have gotten all excited and thought it was some kind of cryptid or something. I tried to look up birds that are 3 feet in height or similar and live in Butler County, or at least Ohio, as a whole, but I didn't find anything that looked similar to what I saw. Plane or other man-made aerial machines. This is the theory that makes the least sense, as it wasn't a plane, as it was flying too close to the ground, too close to the bridge, and was too small to be one or anything else meant for a person to fly. A drone makes the most sense, but I feel like I would have seen the propellers spinning or something like that. A gliding lizard, zhanglong, or a different type of unknown animal. This is obviously the cryptid explanation, as the gliding lizard lives in southern India and southeastern Asia, and is up to 8 inches in height, much smaller than what I saw. And the zhanglong has been extinct for a long while. This story stuck out to me, as the person who was seeing whatever it was very rational in their thinking. I find it compelling that they didn't immediately think something paranormal, and instead were looking for the most logical explanation. Although, whatever they saw definitely sounds bizarre, and if it were a flying dragon, it would very much be a long way from home and time. Perhaps if they really did see this thing, maybe it was something slipped between dimensions. I can't say for sure, but I'm just giving some thoughts. What did I encounter on the beach? I don't believe in anything paranormal, but I can't think of any rational way to explain what I saw. This happened in mid-November, but I still think about it a lot. I live on the coast of Lake Michigan, where it's common for sea glass to wash up on the beach. It's been a hobby of mine to collect it since I was a little kid, and my mom and I would collect it on the beach near our house. I prefer to go in late fall or early spring when nobody else is there to pick up the good pieces and the wind isn't too cold yet. There's a park near where I live now that is especially good for sea glassing. It's tucked in between private properties, so not a lot of people know about it, and in mid-November the beach is completely empty. There's a paved trail that leads from the parking lot down through the ravine and to the beach house. But on this day, I felt like exploring a bit. I walked along the top of the bluff until I found a small, unmarked trail, and I decided to follow that. It led down to the beach, but I couldn't find a good access point that didn't involve climbing, so I kept walking. Eventually, it led to a dead end. I turned around to walk back, and as I did, I heard something thump loudly on the ground like it fell out of a tree. Then suddenly, I heard the sound of something charging through the brush straight towards me. It sounded large like a bear, but there aren't any bears in my area. I instinctually made myself look big and shouted, "Hey," in a deep voice. Whatever it was stopped about 20 feet away from me. I stood there staring at the spot for about 30 seconds before cautiously continuing back up the trail. I went back to one of the clearings and climbed down onto the beach. The whole time I was walking, I couldn't shake the feeling that somebody was watching me. The beach was empty though, so I figured I was still just shaken up from whatever happened in the woods. I also kept hearing a second set of footsteps in the gravel behind me, matching my pace exactly. But since nobody else was on the beach, I figured it was just an echo. Then I got to the beach house. I had to pee, so I went behind it to see if the bathroom was open. As I turned the corner, I saw something peeking around from the far side of the building at me. It had a human-like body, but it was about 7 feet tall, and had deer antlers sprouting from its head. Its skin was so pale white that it was translucent. I could see the blue of its blood vessels. It also had no discernible facial features. It had the bone structure of a face, but no eyes or mouth or anything. I immediately started sprinting up the main trail. I'm very out of shape, but I ran the whole way up the bluff. I thought I was going to pass out when I got to my car, but I didn't take a second to catch my breath before driving away. I drove to a nearby restaurant, and while I was there I texted my friend about it. He told me I was just upset about some other things going on in my life and I was just seeing things. It felt very real to me, but I accepted that. I was feeling very emotional that day, and maybe my brain was just playing tricks on me because of it. But months later, I still can't get it out of my mind. It felt so real. If it was real, it had to be a cryptid. So I'm making this post now to ask you all what it could be. This was an incredibly weird story and very unsettling. As someone who lives relatively close to Lake Michigan, I can say I have never seen anything like this before at all. My first thought would be perhaps this would be a mountain lion. Depending on how far north this person was, it's entirely possible that it could have been just that, a mountain lion, and they're incredibly hard to spot in the wild. But a mountain lion definitely isn't pale white or have horns. Whatever this thing was, it sounds like the phenomenon the knot deer. According to Cryptid Wikipedia, the knot deer is a creature said to inhabit the Appalachian Mountains, with most sightings being in the state of Tennessee. The animal is characterized as looking like a normal deer at first glance, but upon closer inspection, it becomes apparent that something is off with its anatomy and behavior. So this doesn't exactly fit either, as Lake Michigan isn't anywhere near the Appalachian Mountains. Could it possibly be a Wendigo? I'm really not sure. Nothing truly seems to fit with whatever this creature was. What do you think? Something strange in the woods. My grandfather told me this story when I was staying at his place a couple of years ago. I don't remember how it came up exactly, but I think it fits the thread pretty well. It was so odd and out of the blue, and I was so taken aback that I wrote down all the details I could remember after the fact. So this isn't a word-for-word transcription, but it'll suffice. Anyway, back in the 1960s, my grandfather on my dad's side was drafted into the Army for the Vietnam War. He got discharged in late 1972 and drifted apart from all of his war buddies except for one. They lived remarkably close to each other in Washington state, and both exhibited some serious post-war PTSD issues. So, they decided to go on a hunting trip together around autumn of 1973, hoping to find healing or closure after the war. As he tells it, he would always hunt deer in the woods behind his house. In those days, his home was more of a cabin, with just the basic necessities. It was probably late afternoon in rural Washington state. Anyone who's been in the Pacific Northwest forest knows how thick and dense the foliage and trees are, not to mention the fog. You can't see far ahead. Sightlines become blurred. Sounds around you become amplified. This sense of isolation causes your blood pressure to rise. So, my grandfather and his friend from Nam are both hunting off trail, tying bright markers on tree branches as they move through the underbrush so they don't get lost. Suddenly, they hear a sound. It's the blaring sound of a train horn. It's so loud, it causes the two men to become disoriented. My grandfather recalls that he fell to his knees, hands over his ears, screaming, feeling his throat moving air, yet not hearing it. This sound doesn't seem to have a direction. The sound is all-encompassing. It's everywhere. The ground is shaking, and, like a bad cliché, as soon as it began, it stopped, dissipating in an instant. They're both kneeling there stunned. Their ears are ringing so badly they can't hear their own voices. Their mouths move, but nothing happens. As the sun sets, they begin to head back, obviously spooked beyond belief. Since their eardrums are shot, they scribble notes to each other on a notepad as they hike back to my grandfather's cabin. As they're heading back, they see something hanging behind a tree up ahead on the trail. Its outlines are blurred, but as it floats, the best way my grandpa described it to me, towards them, it's revealed. It's themselves. It wasn't like looking in a mirror per se, because it was a creature. My grandfather felt it. This thing was blurry and fuzzy, But my grandfather, in his early 30s at the time, said he saw himself as an old man. White beard, frail, sunken eyes. He had to squint, but the facial features were the same. His war friend, however, had a bullet hole in his head. The figure then morphed into black, an eternal void, death. The early evening pinkish-orange sun rays just ended when they reached this blackness. They panicked at this point, running backwards into the woods, screaming like madmen. As darkness fell, they decided to keep on going, refusing to camp out in those woods. When recounting the story for me, my grandfather, never overly religious, said, "I don't know what in the hell that thing we saw was, but I know for sure, and I mean damn sure, that it wasn't from this earth. What still bothers me is that I never saw what it actually looked like. I thought, after the fact, that it might have been a manifestation of Satan, because it was evil. And I'll tell ya, I saw true evil in people during the war. But that thing? I don't know. It was something else. It was an evil f***ing bastard, and if I would have gotten closer, well..." He trailed off there, but his uncomfortable, haunted glance practically finished the rest. After sprinting for a few miles, their flashlights luckily illuminating their trail markers, they reached the cabin, the night sky completely moonless. They anxiously stayed in the cabin until sunrise, their loaded hunting rifles next to them at all times, the windows and doors locked, blinds all shut, no lights on. If that thing was still out there, their wooden door would have been a relatively fragile barrier. Their anxiety-filled pacing must have made time slow to a crawl. At one point, they broke down and began praying, neither man ever being raised religious. Mind you, these are two battle-hardened Vietnam veterans who both saw combat. They may have had PTSD, but for something to scare both of them to this degree, yeah, it bothers you, doesn't it? Personally, it makes my skin crawl. Yet, with that said, no other strange occurrences or experiences happened that night, or ever again for my grandfather. He moved shortly afterward to a different town in Washington and promptly met my grandmother. He refuses to this day, nearly 50 years later, to step foot into any forest. Sadly, my grandfather said that the thing he and his friends saw in the woods that night was a bad, accurate omen for their lives. My grandfather has struggled with alcoholism his entire life. Even today, after a liver transplant, he still drinks daily. His friend, however, committed suicide in 1975. He couldn't handle his own personal demons. Perhaps if there had been proper mental health services back then, things would have turned out differently. This is a very haunting and sad story, but also incredibly bizarre at the same time. There could be quite a few explanations for this story, but obviously I couldn't say for sure what really happened here. My first thought was, could this be a case of a Glimmerman encounter? But this story doesn't really fit the typical encounter with one. But I believe this cryptid is relatively new and coined by Derek Hayes from Monsters Among Us podcast, if I'm remembering correctly. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. I don't think I've ever heard of a Glimmerman projecting what sounds like these two men's futures. So that kind of makes me think this would be something else. My next guess is, could this possibly be some kind of mimic? It sort of fits what's going on in this story, but also not at the same time. It's almost like it's a mimic mixed with a Glimmerman. My last theory would be, could this be a possible shared psychosis episode between these two war veterans? We know veterans' mental health has historically not been treated or taken seriously until very recently in history. Could it be possible, with these men essentially fresh out of war and combat, that this was their minds trying to deal with their trauma? I think the human mind is much more powerful than we realize, and it can lead to some strange things happening. I'm not a doctor, but that's just my thoughts on the subject. What do you think was happening here? A creature in the North Woods. I was bikepacking with some buddies in the Northwoods of Wisconsin. It was early winter, but not very snowy, just cold. We were about 3 days into our trip, and it was getting close to dusk, so we decided to go off the trail a little and look for a spot to set up camp. The sun was setting. That's where things got weird. Very, very weird. We saw an area that was sort of in a mini valley. Or a grove. Just some little hills about 10 feet high with trees on the peaks. Like I said, it was early winter with barely any snow on the ground, just cold. When we started to bike toward the mini valley, the snow started to thicken, a lot. It went from 2 inches to 6, then 8, then a foot. We had to walk our bikes through it. We all wanted to turn back and find a different spot, but as soon as I'd think about it, I'd start thinking about how nice the mini valley was. It was like something else was thinking for me. My buddies all just kind of looked at each other, and we pushed onward to the mini valley. Then it started to get very sunny and warm, but the snow stayed at about a foot, not melting at all. We didn't really notice it at first until my friend, let's call him Jeff, took off his coat. Then we all started to sweat, like we were warm on the inside, but not on the outside. When we got to the area, we heard leaves blowing in the trees. It was early winter, and the closest evergreen was like 100 feet away. But these leaf sounds were right above us. I started to get a really bad feeling about it all, but my buddies didn't notice. Anyway, we set up our tents, our little fire grill. It was a grate you could place over a fire, and our gear. We talked and drank and smoked some cigarettes. We were all having a good time for several hours. Eventually, we decided to get into our tents. There were 2 tents and 3 people to a tent. This is where it got scary, downright spooky. I heard some animals running around the tents for about 10 minutes. I sat up in my sleeping bag and unzipped the window flappy thing. I saw some coyotes. Okay, no big deal. We're 6 on 4, so I quietly zipped the flap back up and tried to go back to sleep. I couldn't. I knew something else was out there. I had a terrible gut feeling. It felt like I had liquid fear in my veins. That's the only way to describe it. Then I heard a yelp, a whine, then a second later a soft thump. I heard the little coyote feet running away, and I realized something was wrong. Right away, I realized a coyote got hit or kicked and must have flown a few feet. Then I realized something big kicked it. There was also an absolutely disgusting smell, like mildew, burnt milk, and body odor. I thought it was a bear or something. So my dumbass, save me the lecture, grabbed the can of bear spray I kept in my bag, and I grabbed my pistol. I unzipped the tent as fast as I could and froze in place. I couldn't move. Physically not able to move. Not because of fear, but I don't know what it was. But what I do know is this. It was not a bear. It stood up. It stared at me for like 3 minutes straight. Whatever it was chiseled. Skinny yet chiseled. Its eyes were black with blue pupils. Its head was shaped like a sock, and its cranium jiggled a little when it stood up. It was tall, like maybe 15 feet tall. No hair, lanky and skinny. Its skin was somewhere between tan and opaque, but very smooth and shiny. It had long arms, long legs. It was humanoid, that's for sure, but its limbs were oddly proportioned compared to a human's. Its neck was like a foot long, but looked layered, like gills, but made of skin. It breathed kind of raspy, like an old smoker. It had long, curly fingers, no fingernails, or none that I saw. Its mouth was circular. I could understand what it was thinking. I couldn't hear its thoughts. More like I could feel its intentions. I couldn't move, because it didn't want me to move. It was studying me. It knew what I was thinking. It knew I was going to shoot at it, but it didn't want us to leave. It just didn't want to be in danger. It was lonely. The thing let me go after about 30 seconds. I just sat down on a rock while I stared at it. No matter what, I couldn't break eye contact with it. I didn't feel like I was in danger. But after the heavy neck breathing and the creepy eye contact, I heard a soft whisper in both my ears, and it said, "Green is the color of life." Then it looked at me for confirmation and said, "Okay, bye now," and blinked. While it blinked, I felt like I had green food coloring in my eyes. As soon as its eyes opened again, the green wash was gone, and it took off into the woods at a ridiculously high rate of speed, like maybe 30 miles an hour. There was a line of kicked up snow that followed the creature where it went. I didn't dare follow it. I don't know what it was. But I slept very well that night. When I woke up, my buddy Jeff, who was in the other tent, said he had a dream that perfectly described the whole thing. He said it felt real. I told him it was, and explained from my point of view. Everything was fairly normal after that, aside from the guttural screeching in the middle of the night, and me and Jeff being thoroughly spooked. With this last story, it's incredibly bizarre, and again, I know Wisconsin very well, and I've never heard of an experience like this before. Maybe I need to go spend some more time up in the North Woods. So I'm really not even sure where to start with this encounter. There's so much high strangeness happening in it. The first thing that just seems very bizarre is whatever this valley was, and the strangeness surrounding it. It's very odd how it seemed to have some magnetic pull to it, and the weird changing of temperatures. I'm not sure if there's an actual weather phenomenon that could explain this, and I just don't know about that. I also like that this person immediately thought that whatever was outside was a bear. It's a smart guess, and I think anyone who knows the woods would also guess that. But this was definitely not a bear, whatever the thing was. I find it most compelling that this creature didn't seem evil or had bad intentions. It just didn't want to get hurt. It also made me feel sad for it that it appeared to be lonely. Maybe this thing is stuck in our world. I'm really not sure. The green comment was also very strange, and I don't even know what that could mean or be about. If you have any ideas, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you liked it. Did you like me covering cryptid encounters? And would you like to see more of these types of videos? Let me know in the comments below. If you have your own scary story or close encounter to share, you can either send it in the comments, post on my subreddit, r/ihaveaspookystory, or send it to my Gmail, pinkpossiblystories@gmail.com. Maybe your story will be in a future video. Good night, sleep tight, and don't let the shadows bite.